Hey, so real quick before we start, I think this channel is starting to become something of an RG35XX-H channel, or at least a retro handhelds one. I just want to put it out there that that isn't really the intention of this channel. I want to make like budget friendly consumer electronics reviews kind of thing, but for now I really like this device, so that's kind of what I'm making content on. I do have a couple of other exciting videos coming up though, so if you're interested to that, please do subscribe. Also, in this video, I'm kind of focusing on the RG35XX-H because that's the only one that I have. However, it should, for the most part, still apply to most of the other XX class devices that Anbernic has put out. So if you have one of those devices, or if you're looking to buy one of them, this guide should still be helpful to you in some way. Real quick, I do have links to almost everything that I'm using down in the description. They are affiliate links, but they are the best price that I could find from reputable stores on AliExpress. So if you want to purchase them, they are right there. Alright, so a bit of a lore background for the uninitiated. This is a retro gaming handheld device called the RG35XX-H. Of course, what a name. But for what it's worth, it's pretty good at emulating systems all the way up to the PS1. So if you really want to scratch that nostalgic itch and want to put yourself back in the shoes of when you were a kid, for example, it's pretty good at doing all that. And just the value proposition of this one right here, for about $50 on sale, you can get emulation all the way up to PS1, as I've mentioned, and you also have twin stick inputs in a pocketable form factor, and the build quality itself is pretty good. I really like the device itself, but I think there's been something that's always held it back. Now, in my opinion, the one thing that's always held this device back has been its horrible case of kernel snapping on the analog sticks. And for a twin stick device, it's kind of the point. And to make matters worse, the manufacturer has refused to open source the kernel. Now, this is a Linux device, meaning that for the most part, community efforts to fix the analog sticks have been not very fruitful until recently. Now, a couple months back, a very talented developer who goes by the name Gamma has decompiled the kernel of the device and fixed the analog sticks pretty much. And up to recently, the only way that a consumer could get this on their device is by patching the bootloader and using a custom firmware known as Nully. And while there are some people who would be comfortable with tinkering with their device to this extent, I'm pretty sure most of us wouldn't really want to do that. However, with the recent release of MIUI, which is another custom firmware for this device, the sticks have actually been completely fixed and been rolled out with a new update. Meaning that, at least on paper, the only thing that we need to do right now, today, as the user of an RG35 whatever, simply upgrade to the newest version of MIUI and we have instantly better sticks. For free, which is actually kind of insane. However, if you're willing to spend just a couple more bucks on your device, and if you're willing to show it a little bit more love and time, I think you can get a lot more out of it. And I genuinely think you should. That's kind of the point of this video. So let's get to it. Let's go see what are the changes and the bare minimum upgrades that I would consider to make the most of your RG35XX-H or any of the other budget Anbernic devices if you've got one. Alright, so let's go ahead and start with the original kernel just to set the stage. This is the version of the sticks that Anbernic had shipped the device with, and as you can see from the disgusting kernel snapping and the dead zones, this is basically a glorified D-pad on stilts. I don't have any footage of me playing any games with this, but I'll attach something from YouTube. And just to make sure that the app itself isn't bugging, this is what it's supposed to look like. This is on a PC with like ideal Hall Effect sticks. So here I have updated to the latest version of MIUI, which is MIUI Banana, and I've turned my app into an entire gamepad / stick testing utility. Extra is my middle name, how did you know? In case you want to test your own sticks, I've made the app available on the MIUI Discord server, so go ahead and use that if you want. So what we have right here is just the sticks with the kernel patch, with just software changes, and we can see a remarkable improvement. However, there is still a little bit of kernel snapping. Like, as you can see here, I'm just trying to draw a circle with the sticks. Like, I'm genuinely trying my best, but it still seems to be drawing really weird shapes. So here I've gone ahead and added a couple of elevated stick grips, which should, at least in theory, help me with precision. You know, just in case it's a skill issue that I can't draw circles, but yeah, more on the grips later. Oh, and here's a little test that I've devised just to show the cardinal snapping. If you try and color the whole range, we can see a little bit of prominence still in the cardinal axes. So here we've got the infamous Mario 64 test. Now initially you weren't really able to even make Mario walk in any direction because of the kernel snapping. But what we have right here is even after the kernel patches, there is still a bit of snapping. I don't know if it's actually noticeable on the video, but the way that Mario is changing directions is kind of immediate and certain for me. Also, like the amount of braking that he's doing is not something that I'm doing willfully, so yeah, that's kind of an artifact of kernel snapping itself. When you make tiny changes, it wants to think of it as kind of a big change. Now, one of the solutions to our problem right here might be elevated stick grips. As you can see over here, if the stick itself had its sampling points on this tiny little sphere over here, adding it a little bit of a lift or a radius increase on that sphere would make it easier for us to reach those little sampling points. Now, bear in mind, this doesn't actually add any more sampling points, it just makes it easier for us to reach them. So let's go ahead and install a couple of cheap elevated stick grips. That's for the Joy-Con. Now, of course, this one's also linked in the description if you want to buy it. But yeah, just making a couple of little steps, I do notice a bit more precision. But if you can notice now, yeah, right there. Yeah, there was a little bit of snapping. Now, that really hasn't improved, and I don't think adding any kind of grips is going to improve with this situation right here. And here I am trying to play the twin stick shooter known as Descent. Yeah, this one's on Portmaster, by the way, pretty neat game. It's a twin stick shooter, and even though the game itself is great, I found myself crashing into walls. I don't know if I'm just a bad player, but yeah, in its current state, like I genuinely had a lot of trouble trying to get the ship to go where I wanted it to go. So our solution today actually comes in the form of these pretty cheap Joy-Con replacement modules. These are Hall Effect and made for the Nintendo Switch, but they actually do fit our device almost perfectly. And this one, it costed me $6 shipped for the pair on AliExpress. Links in the description again. But there are also cheaper ones which I can't guarantee work better, and there is also one for about $12 which I've heard really good things about, but I didn't want to spend that much. There's actually people who spend like $20 on getting GoalyKit modules for the device, but I don't know about spending 1/3 the device's price on, you know, just the sticks. So yeah, let's go ahead and shut down our device and pull out the SD card and leave that safely to the side and get disassembling. Now to open up the device, you're gonna need 1.5mm hex screws. Wait, that doesn't look right. Yeah, that's better. Once all 4 screws are removed, go ahead and use a plastic prying tool or something, or a guitar pick to open up the chassis. I'm using my nails here, low reason, we might get into that later, but use a ceramic pick to remove the battery because you might do, yeah, that. I shorted it. Anyway, once the battery is removed, our next order of business is to disconnect the speaker modules that we have down here. Very gently use a prying tool or something to pry that out. Right now, if you haven't modded your device, you might want to take away the shoulder buttons that are up there, but I've actually modded my device with some fabric to keep them in place. It actually prevents rattling when the device is up, and I think it greatly improves the quality or the perceived build quality of the device. But yeah, gently take off the speaker modules. They're not really screwed onto anything, but yeah, you're gonna have to like drag them out. And right below that, we have the analog sticks, and they're both screwed onto the device with 2 Phillips head screws. They're actually kind of visible under the speaker modules, but yeah, you don't have to unscrew them to remove the speaker modules. Let's go ahead and pull that one out as well. Now to actually remove the analog sticks, you're going to need crosspin or Phillips head screws. This one right here had the number 00 on them, so 00 size, I guess. And yeah, just hold it in place and remove it. And now do note that the analog sticks are protruding on the other side. Yeah, if you put pressure on the device as you're trying to unscrew it, you might actually break the brackets. Lift these tiny little black things that are attached to the ribbon cables, which should make this socket a bit looser, and then pull it out gently. Quick note, while we can actually compare, the stock grips have a much nicer, softer rubber finish to it, and the head is actually a bit bigger. The replacement ones that I have are at least 0.3mm smaller than the stock ones. It might also be a good idea to gently bend the ribbon connector over here. Don't press down on it, but just, it's a suggestion, not an order to that. But yeah, the connectors are also longer on the replacement module, so don't freak out if it doesn't go all the way. Try and line it up with the connector, and you might find something that you can put a little bit of pressure on. This might be easy if you're holding it up, but yeah, you place it down, and then once it's actually inside the connector, press down on the little black thing that you lifted up, and then just hold it in place. Again, don't push it down on the work surface. Make sure that it's coming out right on the other side, and hold it with your hands and screw it. The original two Phillips head screws, of course, and yeah, that looks about right. And while you're here, actually just press down on the ribbon connector just a little bit, just so we can make sure that it doesn't get caught with the speaker mechanism. And on the other side, yeah, just lift the black part again and make sure that there's enough room for the connector to go in. Give it a little bend. You might find it easier if you place it on top first to find out which direction you should bend the connector on. Yeah, and just screw them back in place. Well, we actually have time for the lore about why I use my fingernails to open this. When I was about 14 or 15, I used to have something of an unpaid internship at a mobile repair store. And the owner for that shop actually had a very long and polished thumbnail, like literal thumb's nail that was long, and everything else was trimmed and clean. And I was just wondering, why would this man do this? And he used to say that everyone who joined his shop used to use plastic prying tools to open phones. But this guy, who actually had like 10 to 15 years of repairing phones experience at that point, actually only used his thumb's nail. And now the hygiene concerns behind this is something else, and I wouldn't really use my fingernails to open someone else's device if I'm repairing it. But oh, by the way, when lining up the speakers connectors, just make sure that they're lined up properly before putting them in. They shouldn't really take a lot of force, and use a suitable tool for that. Yeah, back to like suitable tools. The reason this guy used to use his thumbnail was because he could actually feel and gauge how much pressure he was putting on the device. I actually didn't listen to him, obviously, and I used to use plastic tools for almost everything until I actually broke the snapping connector in a couple of my devices. Like, if you go back and look pretty carefully on this one as well, yeah, it's broken. Anyway, yeah, that was quite a straightforward process, but just make sure that everything is working before you screw in everything, and make sure the connectors are in place. For example, if something is loose, this might have issues, but yeah, everything seems fine right now, and I was actually seeing a lot of promise on the sticks themselves. So now I'm gonna go and screw everything in. Alright, so once all of that's done, I've gone ahead and installed the elevated stick grips on the new sticks, and you can see they're a bit looser. That's because the head is actually like 0.3 millimeters smaller than the other one, but it doesn't really cause any functional problems. But yeah, look, I can draw circles. It really wasn't me. Quick note, by the way, I couldn't for the life of me figure out why exactly, but I couldn't get a full range of motion when using any kind of stick grips on the new sticks. I think it's because of the size difference, but yeah, the original sticks themselves have a pretty decent range, but when using some kind of stick grips, it limits them to a circular place. I don't know, they are recessed sticks, and it's kind of what comes with that kind of design anyway. So I've gone and used this middle ground kind of thing, which adds a little bit of range but still gives a comfortable touch for the whole sticks. Right, so like let's step back into Mario 64 for our test, and as I can immediately notice, I can go from running fast to like a walking pace without Mario trying to pull off a Tokyo Drift move as I was doing earlier, and most of the cardinal snapping itself has been fixed, so I'm kind of glad that it wasn't actually an issue with the game, which I actually had my suspicions on. Here's Doom running on Portmaster, which for our intents right now, great game that it is a good twin stick shooter, but I think this game has some kind of translation layer between like the controller inputs and the mouse, so it was a bit weird, but I did find myself increasing the sensitivity wherever I could, and now I could actually afford it because I'm using decent Hall Effect sticks, right? Now here I am playing Descent again, and I'm having a much better time because the ship is actually under my control and I'm able to make it move where I wanted to. So maybe I really wasn't that bad at the game again. It could have been just the sticks, or it could have been placebo, I don't know, but I did find myself having a much better time controlling the ship itself and making it go where I wanted it to go. And at the very least, just knowing that for the lifetime of the device itself that I won't have some kind of stick drifting issue just because they're Hall Effect sticks that I go for a couple bucks more gives me a lot more reassurance. Alright, so there we have it. If you really enjoyed the video, do leave a like and subscribe. If you have comments, or questions. If you have questions or comments, leave it down in the comments. If you if you have questions or comments, leave it down in the comments section. I'm new to this. If you have any comments, if you have any questions, leave it down in the comments. If you have questions, leave it down in the comments. I'll try to help you out. And if you can, please do support my work. I think that for the foreseeable future, this might be the last video that I have on this device, but I do have a couple more exciting ones coming up. So stay tuned if you want to watch them.